So you're thinking of moving to Vancouver, you're sitting at home and you're wondering, what is it really like to live there? Well, that's what this video is going to try and tell you. I'm trying to answer that question, giving you the honest answer of the pros, the best of the city, and the cons. What's really kind of the ugly underbelly that not everybody recognizes, not everybody talks about. I don't think there's anybody really better positioned to be sharing this with you than myself, who's a lifelong resident. I was born and raised in this city, lived here my entire life, except for 5 years when I went away to university, but I came back and I'm raising 4 young kids in this city. I'm also a real estate agent here. So I'm showing people, I'm helping people move to this city. I've helped hundreds of people move to this city over the last 15 years. So I know this city like the back of my hand, and I'm gonna share the good and the bad with you right now. Here we go. So we're gonna start with pro number 1, and that is nature. The city has it in abundance. It is everywhere you look. You can't get away from it, even if you try. There's parks everywhere. There's water and ocean and blue skies and sometimes dark skies, but snow-filled mountains, greenery everywhere. The lushness of this city is incredible. It's extraordinary. You're never more than, I don't know, probably 5 minutes from just being out in green space and about 30 minutes from being in complete wilderness. If that's what you want to find, you can find it in any direction. And that could be out on the water, on a boat, or it could be up in the mountains, could be skiing. You could be snowboarding, rock climbing, just hiking, just going for a stroll through the woods with your dog. Whatever it is, whatever, way that you want to connect with nature, you can find that here in Vancouver. The people who really love this city, I think most of us stay here because of the nature, because we're connected to that in some way. And so if you're missing that, I think you're going to find that you can really connect to it when you're in a place like Vancouver. And here's con number 1, and it's connected to pro number 1, the nature and the greenery. It's the rain. Rain in Vancouver. You can't get away from it. I'm sure you've heard about how bad it is, and it is pretty intense. It can be really intense. In the middle of winter, we're now in March, so it's no longer, or actually it's mid-April, sorry. We're no longer in the middle of winter, and you can kind of see the end is near, the spring is on its way, spring is here, weather is warmer, but it's still wet and relatively cold. But in the middle of winter, we can go 30, 40, 50 days with basically straight rain and dark. The sun rises at, 8:30 a.m. and sets around 4 p.m. So there's not a lot of sunlight, and you could be at work basically the entire time that the sun is up. So you go to work in the dark and you come home in the dark, and that doesn't last, it lasts maybe 6 weeks, but that's pretty intense, and a lot of people have a hard time with that. We manage it, we deal with it by cozying up at home. Personally, I love that period because it gives me an excuse to stay at home, watch Netflix, curl up on the couch, read a book, do sort of cozy things. And a lot of people deal with it by going away on vacation, going to sunny places like Hawaii or Mexico, as most of us do in the rest of Canada as well. But it's a little unusual to get that much rain for Canada. So you got to be ready for that. And if you don't like rain, this might not be the ideal spot for you. Pro number 2 is our mild climate. Definitely, we have no extremes in temperature. The coldest it gets in winter is maybe -10, but really it hovers around 0 for a couple months. And more often we're getting closer to +5 and occasionally down a degree or 2 below 0. The occasional snow, but as we just spoke about in the con, mostly rain. And then in the summer months, most of what we have is beautiful weather, sunshine, almost never rains in the summer months, but it's not super hot. And most of our summer period goes from 20 to a maximum of 30 degrees. With a caveat, I should say, like in recent years, in the last couple of years, people have been finding that it's been getting hotter. And, traditionally we don't have air conditioning in this city. Nobody had it until maybe the last 5-7 years in new construction. They're starting to put cooling systems into homes. But the reason for it is that it was never really hot enough to really even need air conditioning. And if you needed it, it was maybe 2 weeks out of the year. I'm not sure if, recent changes are going to be more permanent and maybe it is going to be hotter, but up till now, for the most part, you can count on about 30 degrees being the hottest you're going to find in the summer and around 0 kind of being typical for winter months. So we have a really mild, lush climate. And a lot of people find that's easier on the health, on the lungs. It's one of the reasons that people from other parts of Canada tend to move here as they get older, finding a climate that's not quite as extreme. And in Canada, that's pretty unusual. It's basically Vancouver or Victoria, right? Con number 2 is the cost of housing. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's a pricey place to live. Part of the reason is that it's just such a small city, such a desirable place. We have people coming from all over the world. Immigrants coming to Canada tend to either stay in Toronto or come to Vancouver. And we just have such limited supply of housing that it drives the cost of that housing up. And it's sort of an unfortunate reality, but to get all of the benefits of living here, you do have to pay for it. And what you get tends to pale in comparison to what you might get in other parts of the country where $500,000 might get you a really nice new house in Regina, Saskatchewan. In Vancouver, in the city proper, that will barely get you a studio apartment in downtown Vancouver. Now, that will change as you get out to the suburbs, but just sort of for the stark contrast, I'm using the most extreme example. But you do have to be prepared for paying more and getting less when it comes to housing in comparison to basically anywhere else in Canada. Pro number 3 is diversity. This is one of the most diverse cities in Canada and in North America, really around the world. It's very rare to have so many diverse cultures and diverse lifestyles working harmoniously, living harmoniously together. There's a lot of crossovers, a lot of mixing between cultures and beliefs and styles of living. It's an incredibly open-minded city. So, we have areas in the city that are predominantly Chinese and predominantly Filipino, predominantly East Indian, predominantly gay, predominantly Muslim, or predominantly Sikh. And that's sort of, these pockets all around the city, they intermingle quite harmoniously and get along. And one of the enormous benefits I'm going to mention in one of my next pros is just the abundance of food options that we get as a result of so many really interesting cultures living together. But it makes Vancouver very interesting, very colorful. It makes it just a very fascinating place to live and observe. And for children to grow up in that environment, like I have 4 young kids. So personally, I'm looking forward to that experience for them, that they get to experience those different cultures and see people from different walks of life. And that's how I grew up in the city as well. My friends were from all types of different backgrounds and speaking all types of different languages at home and eating all types of different foods at home, which was a really fun thing for me when I was a kid, because I love to eat. Who doesn't love to eat? But getting to experience the best of, Chinese food or East Indian food or Filipino food or Greek food was, as a German Canadian, a pretty cool experience. Con number 3 is childcare. It's so hard to find quality childcare. It's really hard to express how difficult it is. In fact, it's almost as hard as being able to afford a place to live in Vancouver is getting a kid in a good quality daycare in this city. It's basically like winning the lottery. And it's hard to understand when you come. I think many other places have similar challenges, but it's at an extreme level in Vancouver, to the point where if you've watched some of my other videos, I think it's my moving to Vancouver tips video, I'll post a link to it. I described that before you even plan on coming here, you need to start applying to daycares. If you have children that are not of school age yet, you need to be making those plans really, really early and applying to dozens and dozens of daycares to make sure that you have a chance of getting your kids into one. It is so challenging. Myself, I have 4 young kids, as I've mentioned, and each time we applied to somewhere around 30 different daycares, and each of them got into only one of those 30. I think my son, who got in one when he was 2, I got a call 3 years later when he's already in kindergarten being offered the second spot. We took the first one, but the second spot we were offered was 3 years later, and it was a part-time spot when he was already in kindergarten, and I don't know why they were offering it at that point. So do your research when it comes to daycares. Apply to as many as you possibly can before you are here, and try and find a spot as early as possible. Pro number 4 is the food. And oh my goodness, Vancouver has a glorious food scene. It is so easy to find some of the best food that you will ever eat. And quite often it's actually not that expensive. Like, it's even, I'm going to say fast food, but I'm not talking about the McDonald's, but I'm talking about like the shawarma type, a slice of pizza. But those styles of establishments are phenomenal. And there's so much competition and so much ethnic diversity that there's all these groups of people are making the best food that you've ever eaten. And more often than not, it's not terribly expensive. I mean, you can definitely spend a lot of money eating out in Vancouver, and there's some prime restaurants. In fact, I think it's 8 restaurants that were just recognized in the last few months by Michelin. It's the first time that Michelin has recognized any Vancouver restaurants, but that finally happened. And those are some amazing restaurants. Of course, not all of them incredibly pricey, but there are those restaurants, and then a higher tier where you could be spending, $1,000 for dinner for 2. But you can also find dinner for like $15, and it probably won't quite compare, but it'll be really, really good. So if you love food, you're going to be in for a treat in Vancouver. I can promise you that. Con number 4 is our homelessness problem and sort of correlated crime. The downtown east side, it's very obvious how big of a problem it is. And it's become, I would say, a bigger problem over the last 20 years or so. And so much money is being spent on trying to solve that problem. People far more intelligent than I am are doing their best to try and solve it, but nothing seems to work. And from my perspective, one of the reasons for that is we are, as I mentioned, one of the mildest climates and a very open culture, very accepting culture. So we're getting, homeless coming from other parts of Canada end up here in Vancouver. Victoria has a similar problem. But, if you're destitute and homeless in Canada, my goal would be to come to a place like this where it's not minus 30 in the middle of winter and I gotta sleep outside, right? It's a pretty obvious problem in many parts of the city, but it's centered around the downtown east side, Main and Hastings. But, one of the things, like, I've never found it's dangerous. Like, I often get asked, what parts of town should I avoid? And the obvious answer is Main and Hastings. But the truth is, and I have to qualify this by saying, obviously I'm a white male, I'm a large man, but I've never ever felt threatened in any way. You get asked if you can have if you have some money to give them, some food, if you want to buy some drugs, that type of thing. But that's like the worst. And you see the ugliness of drug addiction and mental illness on the downtown east side. Related is crime, and but it is petty crime. It's the type of thing where you can't leave a bike locked, even locked, definitely unlocked outside. That's going to be gone in an instant. But even locked, 99% of locks just aren't good enough. They're going to be stolen really quick. If you leave anything in your car, in most areas of the city, somebody's going to smash a window and grab like your iPhone or your camera that you left on your front seat. And if you leave your car unlocked, as unfortunately I've done far too often in my life, somebody's going to go in and rifle through your car, even in quote unquote good areas of the city. And that's, the city's just not very big. So people who need a quick hit and need access to cash really quickly, they kind of, they go out, they commute to work 5 kilometers from the downtown east side to the really good neighborhoods, and they're trying doors and seeing what's like an easy picking. And so petty crime is a real problem. Serious, highly violent crime is incredibly rare. It's not that it's non-existent. I don't want to pretend that. But typically it is targeted. And so we do have sort of an issue with gang-related crime that rises every so often. And there's kind of like a, retribution is the word that I'm looking for, violence from one gang to another. But it's incredibly rare that it's kind of random. It's not the city where you get mugged, as an example. Pro number 5 for me is the quality of air and water. It's one of those experiences where many people, like, you step off the plane and you instantly notice the air is different. I don't know if for me, the similarity is when I go to Hawaii. When I've been to Hawaii, it's been a while, unfortunately. It's really expensive. I'd love to take my kids. But I went quite a bit when I was a kid. My dad was a flight attendant, and I remember just as soon as the doors open, that bouquet of flowers that is unique to that scent that is unique to Hawaii. And you just know I'm on vacation. And similarly, I find a lot of people have that experience when they come to Vancouver. The doors open and you get that waft of clean ocean breeze, mountain air. It's just crisp and fresh and an amazing air quality. I should mention that the last couple summers, our air quality has been amongst the worst in the world due to some unfortunate wildfires, forest fires, sort of in the central BC area, and the smoke has really covered the city. And so I think it was last summer, at the very least one summer, we had the worst air quality in the world, worse than some industrial cities in China and India, which is a little bit shameful, unfortunately. So, this pro might be turning into a bit of a con, but honestly, 99% of the time, our air quality is amazing. And then our water quality, it's one of the few places you can come to and you drink the water straight out of the tap, and it's delicious. It's way better than bottled water. And I'm baffled as to why anybody in Vancouver buys bottled water. Anybody who's drinking bottled water suddenly becomes less attractive. I understand there's parts of the world and parts of this country where you actually have to drink bottled water because the option at the tap is disgusting or just undrinkable. But that's not Vancouver. We're blessed with incredible water quality. Surface water, it comes from the mountains just above the city. That's where our reservoirs are. So it's very soft water, and it's absolutely delicious. When I'm traveling anywhere and then I come back home and I drink our water, it's the best homecoming gift I can possibly imagine. Con number 5 is the cost of gasoline. It is darn expensive. It's at least 25% more expensive than anywhere else in Canada. And predominantly that's because in Metro Vancouver, so that's the association of 21 municipalities that makes up most of, some people might call also Greater Vancouver, but the general area, roughly 2.5 million people live in that area. Vancouver is just a smaller part. The city of Vancouver is just a smaller part at under 700,000 people. I think it's around 680,000 at the moment. But that organization, one of the ways that they gather money is through taxes on gasoline. They're pretty substantial. I think it's in the range of, right now, gasoline's around $2 a liter, and around 70 cents of that goes purely to taxes. So we are the most expensive place in North America for gasoline. So, we're also not, incidentally, the most popular sales location for Tesla vehicles. EV vehicles have become incredibly popular in Vancouver because people are just highly motivated to stop paying those huge gas bills. I have yet to make that jump. I still drive gas guzzling vehicle, and I regret my decision every time I put the premium gasoline in my car. But it is very expensive. And, the other result of expensive gasoline, I think, is that many people in Vancouver, not only it's the EVs, but it's also other alternative forms of transportation in the city. So transit is incredibly popular. Riding your bike to work, the network of bike routes through the city, people make good use of. People just walk. And then there's Uber and Lyft. But there's also car shares. And so I find especially younger people, people in their, I'd say under 40, are very comfortable not having a car and using these like a variety of alternative modes of transportation. But sort of most critically, I think it's that co-op, the car co-op or the car share that really steps in. And you can have a car for a couple hours for like $5 and go to IKEA and do your shopping and then come back or do a Costco run. There's no real need unless you have 4 kids like I do. And even then, I know people do it without, but I haven't managed. But there's no real reason to have a car in the city if you don't want to. So there you have it. There's 5 pros and 5 cons of living in Vancouver. I'd love to know what you thought of them. So comment down below if there's something you think I missed. Like, what is a major pro for you or a major con that I might not have mentioned? I'd love to hear about it. Just comment down below. Be sure to subscribe. If you thought this video was pretty cool and you'd like other people to be able to see it, give it a thumbs up as well. I'd really appreciate that. I don't make a living on YouTube, clearly. I do make a living as a realtor. And if you're thinking of moving here from anywhere else, I'd love to hear from you. I've helped hundreds of people make the move here to Vancouver, and I'd love to give you a hand too. So be sure to reach out. I do have a free guide moving to Vancouver. If you're curious, reach out, make a comment down below. Happy to send that to you free of charge. Thank you so much for watching this entire video. I really appreciate you sticking around, and I hope to see you on the next one.